Hidden hands built the world we think we know. For centuries, the most advanced technologies and exquisite arts were not created in open laboratories, but guarded by sworn brotherhoods of craftsmen. These 28 secret societies protected skills more precious than gold, from the geometry that defied gravity in Gothic cathedrals to the alchemy that created porcelain. We will uncover why their knowledge was so fiercely protected and how their secret agreements shaped everything from the music we hear to the books we read. You will discover the untold story of how craftsmanship, cloaked in mystery, secretly built the modern world. What forgotten masterpiece in your own city might hold a secret symbol from one of these guilds? A master craftsman's workshop was his fortress, and his unique technique was the treasure locked inside. Picture the chaotic energy of a medieval marketplace, a cacophony of haggling merchants and clattering carts. In this bustling arena, a singular, brilliant method for creating crimson, stained glass or a blade that would not shatter was a fortune waiting to be stolen. There were no patents, no copyright offices to file a claim. The only protection was a wall of sworn oaths and selective silence. This is the crucible where the guilds were forged. They became the living, breathing libraries of human skill. A master did not merely teach a trade. He initiated an apprentice into a sacred trust over years of meticulous observation and labor. This controlled passage of knowledge was not about stifling progress, but about preserving it. It ensured that a revolutionary formula for mortar or a secret glaze would not be diluted, lost, or sold to the highest bidder by an unworthy successor. By fiercely guarding their methods, these brotherhoods built something even more powerful than a trade secret. They built a brand. The mere mark of a stonemason's guild on a cornerstone, or a glassmaker's symbol on a window, was a universal promise of quality. This public trust turned local craftsmen into legends, their names synonymous with excellence across kingdoms. The very economic stability of cities rested upon this foundation of controlled, master-level craftsmanship. Why did these societies guard their rarest skills with such fervor? Because in a world without legal protection, secrecy was the only vault strong enough to protect genius. High above the bustling streets, the stone ribs of a cathedral vault curve and meet in a perfect, weightless dance. This impossible geometry was the protected domain of the compagnonage, a brotherhood so secretive that their true knowledge was never written down in plain sight. They were the master builders behind Europe's great Gothic cathedrals, men who understood stone and stress as if by second nature. To join their ranks was to embark on a years-long pilgrimage called the Tour de France, a journey not of sightseeing but of sworn initiation. An apprentice would travel from one master builder to the next, earning his keep while being slowly entrusted with the society's guarded secrets. He learned how to calculate the precise angle of a flying buttress to counter the immense thrust of a stone roof, a mathematical principle that kept these vast spaces open and flooded with light. He was taught the unique properties of different quarries, knowing which stone could bear a load and which was destined for delicate tracery. Their communication was a silent language of symbols, a chiseled code etched into the very fabric of the buildings they raised. A specific mark on a cornerstone was a signature, a testament to the craftsman's skill and his membership in this exclusive fraternity. For them, a handshake was not just a greeting, it was a key. A secret gesture could identify a brother craftsman in a foreign land, granting him shelter, work, and the trust of the guild. Through this controlled, personal transmission of skill, the compagnonage achieved the miraculous, translating a divine architectural vision into a physical reality that still towers over us. Their legacy is a testament to the power of knowledge passed from one hand to another, a tradition of mastery that, in some form, has never truly died. But while these artisans worked in stone, another society guarded the secrets of a material that flowed like liquid light. The glow of Murano's furnaces was a state secret, banked by the full authority of the Venetian Republic. While the Compagnonage protected their knowledge through symbols and oaths, the glassmakers of Murano were protected by prison walls. The entire industry was physically moved to this small island, a brilliant and brutal strategy to corral genius. Artisans were treated like royalty, granted extraordinary social privileges and the right to bear arms, yet they lived under a simple, terrifying edict. Any master who attempted to leave the Republic would face assassins, his family threatened with ruin. Why such extreme measures? Because the secrets they held were worth more than fleets of trading ships. They alone knew the formula for cristallo, a glass so clear and colorless it mimicked rare rock crystal. They mastered the alchemy of millefeury, where slices of colored glass rods were fused to create intricate floral patterns that seemed to bloom inside the glass itself. They could suspend threads of pure gold within a wine goblet, a shimmering, unreachable treasure. These were not just techniques, they were the pillars of an economic empire. Venetian glass became the ultimate luxury good, a symbol of status and refinement from the palaces of Constantinople to the courts of France. A single piece could command a king's ransom. This monopoly, enforced by the state with lethal seriousness, demonstrates a chilling truth. In the pursuit of economic dominance, a craftsman's freedom was a small price to pay. The Venetian Republic understood that controlling the flow of a unique skill was as crucial as controlling the flow of trade. From the fire and forced isolation of the Glassmakers' Island, we find a different kind of prison, one built not of water and law, but of gears and springs. Deep within the snowy isolation of the Black Forest, the sound of ticking was a kind of currency. In remote farmhouses, during the long winter months, entire families became part of a hidden manufacturing network, each specializing in a single component of what would become a world-famous cuckoo clock. One workshop might master the carving of intricate leaf patterns from linden wood, while another, miles away, perfected the delicate bellows that produced the iconic two-note bird call. This was not a factory, but a distributed web of genius connected by paths known only to the guild. The true secret, however, lay in the marriage of art and mechanics. The clockmakers guarded the precise geometry of the wooden gears, known as the movement, which had to be painstakingly carved and weighted to keep accurate time without the use of metal springs. They developed the tiny automated figures, the dancing couples and woodcutters, whose movements were triggered by the clock's mechanism. An apprentice spent years learning just one facet of this process, never the entire system, ensuring that the complete knowledge of how to build a singing timekeeper from the forest itself remained a collective secret. Through this rigid control, a community of farmers and woodcarvers created a monopoly on charm, turning a local folk craft into an object of global desire. The cuckoo clock became more than a timepiece. It was a piece of mechanical theater, a fragment of the enchanted forest you could hang on your wall. This triumph of isolated ingenuity, of making wood sing and dance, echoes another transformation, one that turned base earth into a substance as white and precious as jade. The sacred forge was a place of prayer where fire and faith met steel. In the hushed silence, broken only by the rhythmic striking of a hammer, a Japanese sword smith did not merely manufacture a weapon, he performed a ritual. These masters, organized into the 5 great schools known as the Goketen, were the guardians of a metallurgical art so advanced it bordered on alchemy. Their life's work was the katana, a blade revered for its lethal sharpness and a flexibility that prevented it from shattering in combat. The soul of this process was a secret known as folding. A single block of raw steel was heated, hammered flat, folded over itself, and then hammered again, a process repeated countless times. This laborious act did not just strengthen the metal, it created thousands of microscopic layers, forging a blade with the resilience of a willow branch and the cutting edge of a razor. But the true signature of a master, the element that separated one school from another, was the hamon, that beautiful, wavy temper line you see along the blade's edge. This was not etched or painted on, it was born from a secret recipe of clay. Before the final, critical quenching in water, the smith would paint a unique mixture of clay, ash, and other mysterious ingredients onto the blade, applying it thicker along the spine and thinner at the edge. When the red-hot steel was plunged into the water, the parts cooled at different rates, creating a blade that was hard and sharp at the cutting surface, but soft and flexible at its core. The exact composition of this clay slurry was a family secret, passed from father to son, the defining fingerprint of a smith's lineage for generations. A single, perfect hamon could identify the work of a legendary master like Meissen, whose blades were considered spiritual icons. This profound devotion, where technical perfection was inseparable from spiritual purity, created artifacts that modern laboratories still cannot perfectly reproduce. The swordsmith's forge reminds us that for these guardians, their craft was a holy dialogue between their hands and the materials they transformed. A similar reverence for sacred materials would guide the hands of another secretive group, the monks who gave the word itself a physical form, forever changing how knowledge was shared. A single drop of ink on parchment could contain ground lapis lazuli carried by caravan from distant Afghanistan. Within the scriptorium's hallowed silence, time itself was measured not in hours, but in the slow, deliberate stroke of a quill. These monastic scribes and illuminators were the guardians of the word, and their craft was a form of prayer made visible. Their primary charge was the preservation of sacred texts, a monumental task that required more than just literacy. It demanded a chemist's understanding of materials. The most brilliant blues came from crushed lapis lazuli, the richest reds from powdered insects or vermilion, and the most luminous whites from lead carbonate. Each pigment required a specific binder, a secret mixture of egg whites, gum arabic, or other organic substances, to adhere to the prepared animal skin and resist fading for centuries. But their most breathtaking secret was the application of gold. They did not simply glue gold leaf to the page. Instead, they perfected a method of raising the parchment's surface with a sticky, plaster-like substance called gesso. They would then apply the impossibly thin leaf over this raised, textured ground and burnish it until it captured the light, making it appear not as a surface decoration, but as a divine, internal radiance, as if the page itself were lit from within by heavenly fire. The intricate knotwork and biblical scenes that filled the margins were a visual language, a way to make complex theological concepts accessible to the illiterate and awe-inspiring to the educated. Every flourish of a capital letter, every tiny, painted saint, was an act of devotion. To produce a single Bible was a multi-year endeavor, a collective masterpiece that represented the pinnacle of this secretive, sacred craft. It was through their controlled, reverent hands that knowledge survived the so-called Dark Ages, one painstakingly copied manuscript at a time. This intimate, miniature artistry, focused on the power of a single page, stands in stark contrast to the next society, whose monumental works were designed to cover entire castle walls and tell stories on a truly epic scale. A tapestry on the loom at the Gobelins manufactory was a world seen in reverse. From the back, where the weavers spent their lives, it was a chaotic forest of tangled threads and knotted ends, a technical nightmare that made no visual sense. Only when the finished work was finally cut from the loom and turned to face the light would the immense image reveal itself, a breathtaking panorama of royal triumph or a scene from ancient myth. This was the secret genius of the Gobelins weavers, a state-sponsored guild whose members were essentially prisoners of their own talent, bound by royal decree to the factory for life. Their first guarded secret was the alchemy of color. While others used dyes that faded, the Gobelins Masters possessed recipes for colors of legendary permanence. A specific crimson was not just a color, it was a complex formula involving insect scales, mordants, and precise temperatures, a process so valuable that the dyers worked in isolated chambers. Their second, even more remarkable secret was the technique of weaving from the back. Working blindly, they used small, handheld mirrors to glimpse fragments of the emerging image on the front, relying on memory and an almost supernatural feel for tension to maintain the perfect consistency of the weave. This method preserved the vibrant clarity of the colors, but it demanded a mental map of the entire, sprawling composition that could take years to hold in one's mind. To ensure their monopoly was absolute, the cartoon, the full-scale painted design they followed, was often a classified document. After a tapestry series was complete, these priceless guides were sometimes destroyed by order of the king, ensuring that a narrative of his power could never be replicated for another court. The result was more than fabric, it was frozen theater. A single commission could become a wall of wool and silk taller than 3 men and wider than a city square, a permanent, portable monument to wealth and authority. These tapestries were not merely decorative, they were the blockbuster films of their day, broadcasting a message of unchallengeable power across the cold stone walls of every palace they adorned. This use of supreme craft as political propaganda shows how deeply these secret skills were woven into the fabric of power itself, a theme just as true for the creators of objects designed for a single, exquisite sense. Gold and jewels were not the only treasures that could break a kingdom's treasury. The true obsession of Augustus the Strong, Elector of Saxony, was a substance so precious it was called white gold, a material that could hold light within its very body. He was so possessed by this passion that legend claims he traded an entire battalion of his own soldiers for a collection of delicate blue and white vases. This was the European hunger for true, hard-paced porcelain, a secret that had belonged exclusively to China for over 1,000 years. The king imprisoned an alchemist named Johann Friedrich Bircher in a castle laboratory, giving him a single, desperate command: unlock the formula. The breakthrough was not a magical transformation of base metals, but a geological discovery. Bircher and his team identified the 2 essential ingredients, a pure white clay known as kaolin and a type of feldspathic rock called petunci. But knowing the ingredients was only half the battle. The true secret, guarded with the same intensity as a state cipher, was the precise ratio of the mixture and the unimaginably high, sustained temperature of the kiln. This was not mere pottery, it was a form of controlled metamorphosis, turning soft earth into a vitrified, translucent, and ringing substance. The Meissen factory became a creative prison, a fortress where these recipes were protected under threat of treason. Artisans within its walls produced whimsical figurines and lavish table services that became the ultimate symbols of aristocratic status. A single Meissen piece, marked with the iconic crossed swords, was a certificate of taste and extreme wealth. This entire epic, driven by one man's obsession for beauty, demonstrates a profound truth. The pursuit of luxury has often been the silent, powerful engine behind scientific discovery and the creation of institutions built on absolute secrecy. The same desire to possess the earth's rarest treasures would fuel the ingenuity of another society, one that learned to deceive the eye itself with the art of the stonecutter. The final surprise inside an imperial Easter egg was a secret even to the men who built it. Within the hushed confines of Peter Carl Fabergé's workshop, the creation of a single egg was an exercise in extreme compartmentalization. A master jeweler in one room perfected the delicate gold filigree of the outer shell, while in another, a clockmaker engineered a miniature mechanism that would cause a tiny diamond-encrusted elephant to parade forth on the hour. Just down the hall, a specialist in enameling worked with powders of crushed glass, applying them in layer after microscopic layer, each firing at a precise temperature to achieve a color of impossible depth and luminosity, a technique known as guilloche. None of these artisans saw the complete design. They were cogs in a machine of breathtaking luxury, each entrusted with a single, protected fragment of the whole. This deliberate fragmentation of knowledge was the ultimate safeguard. Even if a disgruntled worker left, he could take only a sliver of the total genius with him. The fame and the mystique belonged solely to the name Fabergé, a brand built upon the invisible labor of masters who remained forever in the shadows. Each finished egg was more than a gift. It was a portable treasury of rare skills, a symphony of crafts where the conductor was the only one who knew the entire score. This meticulous control over illusion and artistry finds a strange parallel in a society that perfected deception not for beauty, but for survival. The voice of a Stradivarius violin is a ghost in the wood, a sound so resonant and clear it seems to weep or sing from another world. In the small Italian city of Cremona, Antonio Stradivari and his close-knit guild of luthiers achieved an acoustic miracle that modern science still cannot fully explain. Their workshop was not a factory but a sanctuary for a living material. They began with a quest for perfect wood, selecting spruce for the top plate and maple for the back, not merely for its appearance but for its sonic character. This wood was not fresh cut, it was aged for decades, sometimes floating in Venice's lagoon waters or stored in specific conditions that altered its cellular structure, preparing it to become a vessel for vibration. The true magic, many believe, was in the final step, the varnish. This was not a simple protective coat, it was a complex, multi-layered recipe of oils, resins, and mysterious minerals that soaked into the wood. This unique varnish did not dampen the sound, it liberated it, allowing the instrument to breathe and project with a power and sweetness unmatched by any other. Stradivari treated the construction of a violin as a form of sacred geometry. He would spend countless hours calculating the precise thickness of the front and back plates, shaving them down to fractions of a millimeter, tuning the wood itself to a perfect balance of strength and flexibility. The exact arch of the body, the length of the F-holes, the curve of the scroll, every element was a deliberate variable in an equation for acoustic perfection. A deviation too small to see with the naked eye could mean the difference between a fine instrument and a masterpiece that would sell for millions today. The secret died with the last of that Cremonese brotherhood, a final, silent chord in a symphony of lost knowledge. Their relentless pursuit of an invisible perfection, captured in sound, stands in stark contrast to a craft that mastered the art of visual illusion, deceiving the eye with the very stones of the earth. A locked door painted on a wall can feel more real than the wood beside it. This was the domain of the Trompe-l'œil Masters, artisans who held the secrets of fooling the human brain with nothing but pigment and brushstrokes. Their craft was a deep understanding of perception itself. They knew exactly how to manipulate linear perspective, making parallel lines converge at a vanishing point to create the feeling of a receding hallway on a flat ceiling. They guarded recipes for creating shadows that fell with perfect, convincing softness, and they mastered color gradation, subtly shifting hues to make a painted marble column appear to curve and catch the light. Their paint was not just color, it was a scientific tool. They developed unique mediums and varnishes that altered how light reflected off the surface, enhancing the illusion of depth. A nobleman with a cramped, windowless room could commission a sprawling vista of the Italian countryside, complete with a painted balcony and a sky that seemed to stretch into infinity. A structural pillar that ruined a ballroom symmetry could be transformed into a painted statue of a Greek god, seamlessly blending into the decor. These artists were more than decorators, they were psychological illusionists. Their guarded techniques allowed them to sell a dream of space and grandeur, turning their trade secrets into a form of power. This mastery over visual deception proves that the most valuable craft is sometimes not about creating a real object, but about crafting a perfect, believable fiction. Such tangible skill in shaping perception finds its counterpoint in a craft devoted to stopping the most tangible of threats. A knight clad in Milanese plate was a symphony in steel, a fusion of absolute defense and breathtaking artistry. In the smoke-filled forges of Renaissance Milan, the air rang with the hammers of legendary families like the Missaglias and Nigrolis, whose names were whispered in the courts of Europe with the same reverence as great painters. Their genius lay in a profound understanding of the metal itself. They perfected a secret process known as laminating, which was far more complex than simply hammering out a sheet of steel. They would heat and work individual plates in a way that created two distinct properties in the same piece. The outer surface was hardened to an incredible degree, creating a shell that could deflect a sword's edge or the point of a lance. Yet, the core of the plate remained softer and more flexible, a hidden layer designed to absorb and dissipate the brutal force of an impact, preventing the steel from cracking and sending deadly shards into the wearer's body. This was metallurgical alchemy, turning a single piece of metal into a layered defense system. But their craft did not end with mere survival. A suit of armor was also a knight's public identity, a mobile canvas. The Milanese masters guarded another set of secrets for etching and gilding. They used resistant waxes and precise acids to bite intricate scenes of mythology or religion into the steel without compromising its structural integrity. Then they would inlay the etched lines with pure gold, creating a dazzling contrast against the polished, dark gray metal. The result was not just protection, it was a statement of immense wealth, power, and cultural refinement. Each suit was a custom-fitted exoskeleton, articulated with a precision that allowed a trained warrior to run, mount his horse, and even perform a somersault. The guild ensured that every step, from the mining of the ore to the final polishing, was controlled, keeping this life-saving technology an exclusive product for kings and emperors. This profound protection of the physical body, turning a man into an almost mythical figure, resonates deeply with another form of safeguarding, one that sought to protect the human soul itself through the power of organized sound. The soaring voice of a castrato could shatter glass and move audiences to tears, a sound born from a terrible, irreversible choice. In the conservatories of Baroque Italy, a secretive network of music masters guarded the methods for creating this singular instrument. They sought out young boys with promising voices and, before puberty could alter their vocal cords, subjected them to the clandestine procedure of castration. This act, shrouded in euphemism and silence, was the brutal foundation of their art. The masters then took these boys into a rigorous, cloistered training system. The true secrets were not the act itself, but the years of specialized vocal exercises that followed. They developed techniques to expand the boys' lung capacity to an extraordinary degree, allowing them to hold a single, pure note for what seemed an impossibly long time. They taught a unique form of breath control and agility, enabling the voice to navigate complex, florid melodies with both the power of a man's lungs and the crystalline pitch of a child's soprano. The result was a voice unlike any other in nature, a hybrid of immense power and ethereal sweetness that was considered the closest a human could come to hearing the voice of an angel. This sound became the centerpiece of both sacred church music, where women were forbidden to sing, and the dramatic new world of opera, where castrati were the rock stars of their day, commanding adoration and immense fees. The entire system, from selection to training to performance, was a closely controlled secret society, turning a physical sacrifice into a cultural phenomenon that defined an era. The haunting echo of that manufactured, heavenly voice finds its opposite in the practical, earthbound craft of the next guardians, whose secrets were written not in music, but in the very soil that fed nations. The Venetian arsenal was a fortress of industry, a humming city within a city where the destiny of a maritime empire was built daily. Its gates were sealed to outsiders, for inside, the Republic had perfected a method of shipbuilding so efficient it bordered on magic. A single galley, a warship capable of dominating the trade routes, could be conceived, constructed, and launched within the span of a mere 24 hours. This staggering feat was not the work of chaos, but of a meticulously choreographed assembly line, a secret process guarded as fiercely as any naval battle plan. The master shipwrights were the architects of this flow. Their genius was not just in woodworking, but in geometry. They held the secret ratios for designing a hull that was both incredibly fast and remarkably stable, a shape that could slice through Mediterranean waves while carrying a heavy cargo of trade goods or soldiers. This design was broken down into standardized parts, pre-shaped frames and pre-cut planks that only their trained eyes knew how to assemble into a perfect, seaworthy whole. Each craftsman was a specialist, a master of one tiny, critical piece of the puzzle. One team focused solely on treating the wood with a secret mixture of pitch and other substances to repel the relentless shipworm, a creature that could turn a mighty vessel into Swiss cheese. Another group, the sailmakers, guarded the complex art of cutting and sewing canvas to catch the wind with maximum efficiency, their stitching patterns a form of classified information. No single worker understood the entire ship. Only the shipwrights at the top held the complete mental blueprint. This fragmentation of knowledge was the ultimate security system, ensuring that the secret of Venetian naval power could not walk out the gate with a disgruntled carpenter. The arsenal was more than a shipyard. It was a living engine of state power, proving that industrial-scale secrecy and efficiency were concepts mastered centuries before the factory whistle ever blew. This mastery over the sea, however, was built upon a foundation of mastery over the land and the silent, patient science of those who learned to make the earth itself more fruitful. A civilization bloomed in the heart of a desert, fed by rivers that flowed in darkness. The Persian Qanat builders mastered the art of finding water where none seemed to exist, creating a hidden landscape of tunnels that breathed life into the sand. Their first secret was one of vision, the ability to read the land for signs of a distant aquifer. They would identify a fertile spot at the base of a mountain range, a place where gravel met bedrock, and there they would begin digging the mother well, a shaft that could plunge deeper than 100 men standing on each other's shoulders. If they struck water, the true work began. The genius of the Qanat was its gentle, unwavering slope. Using only simple tools like weighted cords and sighting boards, these engineers would tunnel horizontally from their destination, a village or farmland, back towards the mother well. This precise gradient, a drop of only 1 meter for every 1,000 meters of length, allowed the water to flow steadily for dozens of miles, pulled by gravity alone, without ever rushing fast enough to erode the tunnel walls. The entire system remained sealed from the sun, a protected vein that prevented the devastating evaporation that would have claimed an open canal. The knowledge of how to ventilate these tunnels, where to place access shafts for cleaning, and how to reinforce walls against collapse was a protected guild secret, passed from surveyor to digger. These men were more than laborers, they were hydrological architects whose skill could determine the fate of cities. A single canat could sustain 30,000 people, turning a barren plateau into a paradise of pomegranates and wheat. Their craft was a form of alchemy, transforming the most hostile landscape into a cradle of civilization by listening to the silent whispers of the earth. This profound understanding of a fundamental element, water, finds a vibrant parallel in the next society, who unlocked the secret language of color itself, learning to steal hues from the most unexpected places. The scent of rotting shellfish clung to the Phoenician coast like a costly perfume. In the vats of the Tyrian purple dyers, a foul alchemy transformed decay into a symbol of divine right. Their secret was not mined from the earth, but harvested from the sea, from the humble murex snail. Thousands of these creatures were crushed to extract a minuscule gland that held a milky liquid, a substance that seemed utterly unremarkable at first. The true magic, the secret fiercely guarded by royal guilds, was what happened next. Through a process known only to a few, this liquid was exposed to sunlight in precise durations. It did not fade, it was born, shifting slowly from a pale green to a rich, deep crimson, and finally to that legendary, vibrant purple that seemed to drink the light. The final step was the mordant, a secret chemical bath that bit the color into the fibers of wool and silk, locking it in place for a lifetime. A single mistake in timing or temperature, and the precious vat would be ruined. This was not a craft, it was a biological ritual. The cost was astronomical, with some estimates claiming 12,000 snails were needed for a single gram of dye. It is no wonder that the color became the exclusive property of emperors and kings, a wearable declaration of power so expensive that only a god on earth could afford to wear it. From the Roman emperors who forbade its use by commoners to the Byzantine empresses whose portraits glow with its still, Tyrian purple was status woven into cloth. The dyers' guilds protected more than a recipe, they guarded the very visual language of authority for over 1,000 years. This obsession with capturing a perfect hue finds its echo in a society that sought not to dye fabric, but to stain glass itself with liquid light. A pair of spectacles in 1629 was a small miracle of clarity, a carefully ground disc of glass that could bring a blurred world into sharp focus. The Guild of Spectacle Makers, operating under a royal charter in London, did not just sell an accessory, they sold the gift of sight itself. Their workshops were protected spaces where the secrets of lens grinding were closely held. The precise curvature needed to correct the farsightedness of an aging scholar, known as presbyopia, was different from the concavity required for a young clerk struggling with the nearsighted blur of myopia. These subtle geometries were not written down in manuals, they were learned through years of apprenticeship, through the feel of the glass against the polishing wheel and the master's eye for judging the perfect focal length. This was a craft of immense responsibility, and the guild enforced it with strict authority. They acted as quality police, hunting down and punishing makers of deceitful glasses, lenses so poorly made they could cause headaches or worsen vision instead of helping it. Their official seal on a pair of spectacles was a promise of optical truth, but their impact reached far beyond reading and writing. The very principles they perfected, the grinding of convex and concave lenses to bend light in predictable ways became the foundational technology for humanity's next great leap in perception. By mastering the art of correcting individual sight, these artisans unknowingly built the tools that would allow us to see the moons of Jupiter and the single-celled life in a drop of water. The telescope and the microscope are direct descendants of their quiet, meticulous work in London's workshops. They held the key that would unlock the very small and the impossibly large, proving that a craft focused on one human sense could ultimately expand the horizons of all human knowledge. This refinement of vision through shaped glass mirrors another artistic breakthrough, one that learned to capture and reflect the world with the shimmering accuracy of a mirror. A sealed laboratory holds formulas more valuable than a king's ransom. Inside the sanctum of a Parisian perfumer, the air itself was a library of scents, each one a potential key to an invisible masterpiece. These masters, known as nez or noses, possessed a biological genius, an ability to distinguish and recall thousands of individual aromas. This was not merely a good sense of smell, it was a form of synesthesia where memory and chemistry merged into a single, proprietary skill. Their first guarded secret was extraction. They knew that the soul of a jasmine flower was captured only in the cool hours before dawn, and that the petals had to be laid on a bed of purified fat to slowly release their essential oil, a process called enfleurage. Other delicate blossoms required steam distillation, a precise alchemy of heat and pressure to coax out their volatile essence without destroying it. The true art, however, lay in the architecture of a scent. A master perfumer constructed a fragrance like a cathedral with 3 distinct layers. The top notes were the first impression, a bright burst of citrus or green herbs that greeted the wearer. These would soon evaporate, revealing the heart or middle notes, the true character of the perfume, often built around floral absolutes like rose or jasmine. The entire structure rested upon the foundation of base notes, the long-lasting, often animalic scents like ambergris, a rare substance harvested from sperm whales, or labdanum from the rockrose plant. These fixatives were the secret glue, binding the volatile lighter notes together and allowing the scent to evolve on the skin for hours, telling a story from its sparkling opening to its deep, intimate dry down. The complete formula for a legendary perfume was a mosaic of dozens, sometimes hundreds of these ingredients, their exact ratios a secret that never left the perfumer's mind or a locked vault. This was an art form of pure sensation, a way to capture a memory of a garden or an idea of sophistication in a bottle, proving that even the most fleeting of human experiences could be bottled and controlled. This mastery over an invisible element, the very air we breathe, finds a tangible counterpart in the next society's struggle to command an equally ephemeral force, the cold itself. A frozen lake in the dead of winter was not a barren landscape, but a field of white gold. Guilds of ice harvesters saw what others could not, a perfectly flat, thick sheet of clear ice as a commodity to be mined with the precision of jewelers. Their first secret was one of timing. They waited for a specific, sustained cold, knowing that ice formed in layers. The clearest, hardest ice came from still, windless nights, free of the bubbles and imperfections that would cause it to melt too quickly. Using massive, horse-drawn plows, they scored the surface into a grid, and then teams of men with long, specialized saws would cut the giant blocks, each one weighing hundreds of pounds. The true genius, however, lay not in the harvest but in the hibernation. These men were architects of cold, building ice houses that were marvels of passive thermodynamics. They dug deep underground chambers or erected heavily insulated buildings above, their walls filled with a secret, layered packing of straw, sawdust, or even charcoal. Each block of ice was carefully placed inside, each layer separated by more insulating material, creating a sealed, dormant mountain of winter. The design was a science, a precise balance of drainage and ventilation that allowed cold air to sink and settle while letting any meltwater escape without collapsing the entire structure. In the deserts of Persia, this same principle allowed ice to be stored through the blazing summer, a miracle of engineering that defied the very climate. This preserved cold was the lifeblood of cities long before electricity. It kept food from spoiling in markets, preserved life-saving medicines and vaccines, and created the ultimate luxury of a chilled drink on a sweltering day. These harvesters did not just cut ice, they captured a season, turning a fleeting element of nature into a permanent, tangible resource. Their forgotten craft of preserving the cold is the direct ancestor of the humming refrigerator in your kitchen today. This mastery over a physical state of stopping time itself for a perishable element finds its parallel in a craft dedicated to preserving the most perishable thing of all, human memory. A sheet of paper from Fabriano felt different in your hands, a subtle crispness and strength that promised permanence. In the water-powered mills of this Italian town, papermakers did not just manufacture a surface, they engineered a new medium for human thought. Their first revolutionary secret was the raw material itself. While others still used fragile papyrus or expensive parchment, the Fabriano Masters perfected the use of linen rags. They developed a guarded process for fermenting these cloth scraps, breaking them down in vats until the fibers softened into a perfect, uniform pulp. This linen-based paper was inherently stronger and more flexible than anything that had come before, but their true genius was invisible until you held the sheet up to the light. There, glowing within the very substance of the paper, was a watermark, a hidden signature embedded by a secret wire mold pressed into the paper-making screen during formation. This was not a surface stamp, it was a part of the paper's soul, a slight variation in density that created a translucent image. A guild could identify its work with a specific symbol, a bull, a crown, or a complex emblem, turning each sheet into a certified product of their mill and a powerful deterrent against forgery. Their final protective technique was sizing. They dipped the finished sheets in a solution of animal gelatin, a process that sealed the porous surface and made the paper resistant to ink bleeding and feathering. This meant a scholar's precise handwriting or an artist's delicate wash drawing would remain sharp and clear for centuries. The Fabriano Guild protected every step, from the sorting of rags to the final polishing of the sheet. Their high-quality, durable paper became the gold standard for artists like Michelangelo and for the burgeoning chanceries of Europe, the administrative hearts of kingdoms and the Catholic Church. It was on this trusted surface that treaties were signed, ledgers were kept, and masterpieces were sketched, making the Fabriano Papermakers silent, essential partners in the spread of literacy, art, and structured power. Their craft gave a physical body to ideas, creating a durable stage for the human voice, a role that would soon be claimed by a different kind of artisan, those who learned to give sound itself a permanent and repeatable form. A single flawed casting could silence a city's voice for a generation. The bell founders of medieval Europe worked under immense pressure, their secretive art turning molten metal into the communal heartbeat of a town. Their first guarded treasure was the bronze alloy itself, a precise mixture of copper and tin known as bell metal. The exact ratio was a family secret, as too much tin made the bell brittle and prone to cracking, while too little left its voice weak and muffled. But the true genius lay in the shape, a secret profile known only to the master founder and his closest apprentices. This carefully calculated curve, from the thick sound bow at the striking point to the graceful flare of the lip, determined everything: the bell's fundamental pitch, the harmonious overtones that gave it richness and its carrying power across the countryside. To create this perfect form, they relied on the lost wax process, a ritual of clay, wax, and fire. A clay core was built to form the bell's inner shape, then covered with a layer of beeswax. This wax layer was carved with painstaking precision into the final, secret profile of the bell. Then, a second outer mold of fire-resistant clay was packed around the wax. When the entire structure was heated, the wax melted and drained out, leaving a perfect hollow cavity between the inner and outer molds into which the glowing bronze was poured. The moment of truth came after days of cooling, when the clay mold was broken away to reveal the bell within. Only then would the founder know if his calculations and his guarded knowledge had produced a clear, resonant voice or a tonally dead and worthless object. A successful bell was more than a timekeeper, it was a symbol of identity. Its specific tone warned of fire and invasion, called the faithful to prayer, and mourned the passing of citizens. This creation of a shared, public sound stands in stark contrast to the next society, whose skills were designed for the most private and permanent of assignments. A fortress could be a mountain's own shadow, a citadel carved into the summit so seamlessly it seemed to have grown there. The master builders serving the Nizari Ismailis, a group history remembers as the Assassins, possessed a singular, terrifying genius, the art of making a stronghold vanish into the landscape itself. Their craft was not merely about stacking stones high, but about weaving rock and strategy into an unbreakable knot. They began by choosing sites that were naturally defensible, sheer peaks accessible only by narrow, treacherous paths that could be defended by a handful of men against an army. But their true secret was how they turned these mountains into living fortresses. They were hydrological wizards, engineering hidden cisterns to capture rainfall and secret channels to draw water from deep, inaccessible springs, ensuring a garrison could outlast a siege that stretched for years. The entryways were masterpieces of misdirection, a labyrinth of tight, twisting corridors designed as fatal funnels where invaders would be exposed to fire from multiple, concealed angles. Every wall was angled to deflect siege engine projectiles, and every tower was placed to provide overlapping fields of archery. These builders understood defense as a three-dimensional puzzle, and their solutions have baffled military historians for centuries. The fall of their final stronghold to the Mongols did not just mean a political defeat, it meant the extinction of a unique school of military architecture. The builders themselves and the guarded principles they used to make stone defy empires were silenced forever. Their craft, born from the desperate need for survival, demonstrates how the most formidable secrets are often those forged in the crucible of conflict. This mastery of such imposing, tangible strength makes the delicate illusions of the next society seem all the more miraculous. The surface of raw jade is harder than steel, a paradox of beauty that defies the chisel. For the master carvers of ancient China, this stone was not carved but coaxed, worn down over years with a secret alchemy of abrasives. Their workshops were filled with the constant, quiet hiss of a slurry, a carefully guarded mixture of water and specific sands, dragged across the stone's surface by a simple bow drill or a foot-powered wheel. This was not a craft of dramatic force but of infinite patience. A single piece, perhaps a ritual disc known as a bai or a small sculpture of a crouching dragon, could consume a decade of a master's life. The guilds protected two profound layers of knowledge. The first was mineralogical, a deep understanding of jade's two primary forms, nephrite with its fibrous, interlocking structure, and the rarer, more brilliant jadate. Each type required a different slurry, a different pressure, a different rhythm of work. The second layer of knowledge was entirely symbolic. A crack or an inclusion in the stone was not a flaw to be hidden, but a feature to be incorporated into the design, a reflection of the Taoist belief in natural perfection. The motifs they carved were not mere decoration but a visual language. A dragon symbolized imperial power and the life-giving force of rain, while a phoenix represented the empress and the promise of renewal. The carving of a lotus blossom emerging from mud was a lesson in purity and enlightenment. The value of a finished piece was a judgment that only a master's eye could render, weighing the purity of the stone against the flawless execution of a symbol that held the weight of a civilization's philosophy. Jade was not just a precious substance, it was the physical embodiment of virtue, of wisdom, justice, compassion, and courage. To work it was to engage in a spiritual dialogue, making these carvers the silent guardians of an artistic and moral tradition. This profound patience, the willingness to spend a lifetime on a single, perfect object, finds its echo in another society dedicated to the slow, meticulous cultivation of beauty from the living world. Gold tesserae were not merely gold leaf glued to a wall, but light itself captured in glass. The Mossacists of Ravenna and Byzantium perfected an alchemy of illumination, creating tiny, durable squares of brilliance that would glow for centuries. Their first secret was the glass itself, a unique formula that produced opaque colors of incredible intensity. They learned to mix metallic oxides and minerals into molten glass, creating a palette that ranged from deep emerald greens to vibrant lapis lazuli blues, each color designed to be unaffected by the passage of time. But their true masterpiece was the creation of the golden tesserae. This was a delicate, multi-stage process where a master craftsman would first blow a thin bubble of clear glass, flatten it into a sheet, and then carefully lay a sheet of the purest gold leaf upon its surface. A second, even thinner layer of glass was then fused on top, sealing the gold in a transparent, protective sandwich. Once cooled, this glowing pane was cut into thousands of tiny, irregular cubes. The placement of each tessera was a science of perception. These artisans were masters of optics long before the word was formally defined. They did not set the cubes flat against the wall. Instead, they embedded each one at a slightly different angle, a calculated disarray that ensured that no matter where a worshipper stood or how a candle flickered, some part of the mosaic would catch the light and flare into a divine radiance. This technique created a living, shimmering surface that seemed to breathe with a celestial light. Their understanding of perspective was equally profound. They abandoned realistic Roman depth, choosing instead to build their figures from the interplay of color and light. A saint's robe was not painted with shadows, but suggested by placing darker blue tesserae next to brilliant white ones, creating a vibrant, shimmering form that appeared to float weightlessly against its golden heaven. The complete design for a vast dome was a state secret, guarded within imperial workshops. To stand beneath such a canopy was to be immersed in a vision of heaven, an architectural space transformed into a gateway to the divine through the controlled, brilliant reflection of light. This masterful manipulation of illumination to create a spiritual reality finds its dramatic opposite in a society that sought not to capture light, but to command the very darkness that surrounds it. A forbidden knowledge pulsed beneath the skin of Renaissance Italy, a truth about our own bodies that was considered heresy to uncover. In hidden cellars and locked studios, artists and anatomists like Leonardo da Vinci formed a clandestine guild of flesh and wax, risking excommunication and execution to map the human form. Their dissections were acts of rebellion conducted by candlelight on stolen cadavers, with every incision revealing a universe of muscle, nerve, and bone that the Church insisted belonged only to God. Their genius was not just in the act of seeing, but in the secret craft of preserving that vision. They developed techniques to inject the delicate vessels of the circulatory system with warm, colored wax, creating a vibrant, branching tree of arteries and veins within a model. They mastered the alchemy of tinting their special blends of wax and clay to mimic the exact hue of healthy organs, inflamed tissue, and pale bone. A completed model was a frozen moment of revelation, a flayed figure posed in a gesture of life, perhaps holding back its own skin to show the layers of muscle beneath, or pointing a finger towards its own exposed heart. These were not static statues, but dynamic lessons in function. The creation process itself was a closely guarded secret, from the precise recipe for the wax that would not crack or discolor, to the method of suspending a delicate nervous system within the form. These waxen bodies became the most valuable and most illegal textbooks in Europe, passed secretly among progressive physicians and artists. They translated the ephemeral evidence of a decaying corpse into a permanent, perfect reference that could be studied for generations. This courageous pursuit of the body's hidden truths, a science born in shadow, mirrors the wider human quest to uncover the secrets of the natural world that surrounded them. The silent rhythm of a monastery's day is measured in prayer and the slow, patient work of fermentation. Behind austere stone walls, Trappist monks practice brewing not as a trade, but as a form of devotion, a sacred craft where every ingredient is a testament to their faith. The recipes they guard are not written in ledgers but passed down through a living chain of brothers, a sacred trust as integral to their identity as their vows. Each monastery holds its own unique alchemy, a combination of factors that can never be replicated. The specific strain of yeast, a living organism cultivated and cherished for generations, is the soul of their beer, imparting flavors of dark fruit, spice, or earthy notes that are unique to that abbey. The hops are selected for their subtlety, and the water, drawn from a deep, protected well on the grounds, carries the mineral signature of the local earth. The entire process is a ritual of patience, especially for the bottle-conditioned ales. After the initial fermentation, a small amount of sugar and fresh yeast is added just before bottling, starting a second, silent fermentation inside the sealed glass. This slow, carbonating process can continue for months or even years, creating a living beer of unparalleled complexity and depth that evolves in the bottle like a fine wine. This knowledge is protected by their vow of stability, a promise to remain within the community for life, ensuring the secrets never leave the abbey walls. To taste a true Trappist ale is to taste a place and a way of life, a tangible expression of silence, work, and prayer. Their craft demonstrates that the most profound skills are those woven into the very fabric of a disciplined life, turning a simple beverage into a spiritual offering. This art of controlled transformation, of guiding natural processes to create something that endures, finds its ultimate expression in a final society dedicated to stopping time itself for the most fragile treasures. A prince's curiosity cabinet held a frozen menagerie, a lion from Africa snarling silently beside a brightly plumed parrot from the Amazon. These impossible collections were the work of the first taxidermists, whose fledgling art made the distant and the extinct feel terrifyingly close. Their craft began with a perilous secret, a technique for preservation that was as deadly as it was effective. They used a paste or soap laced with white arsenic, a powerful poison that would halt decay and repel every manner of insect and rodent. A single misstep, a cut on the finger while applying the toxic mixture to the inside of a delicate hide, could mean a slow and agonizing end for the craftsman. This was knowledge earned with risk, and it was guarded with the same intensity as any guild's formula. The process itself was a meticulous dissection of life. A master knew exactly how to skin a creature with minimal scarring, how to tan the hide for pliability, and most importantly, how to reconstruct its form. They built miniature skeletons from wood and wire, sculpting muscles from wrapped straw or clay, and then carefully fitted the preserved skin over this artificial armature. The goal was not just to stuff a skin, but to capture a moment of being, to freeze a leopard in a stalking crouch or an eagle with wings slightly spread as if caught in a breeze. For the naturalists sailing on voyages of discovery, these taxidermists were indispensable partners. A new species of monkey or a bizarre marsupial was evidence too fragile to transport alive across oceans. A skilled preparator could transform a rapidly decaying body into a durable, lifelike specimen that scientists back in London or Paris could study for years, laying the very foundations of modern biology. Their silent, preserved animals became the first chapters in our encyclopedia of life. This profound urge to halt decay, to hold a piece of the wild forever in suspension, brings us to the last of our 28 societies, guardians who learned to command the most fundamental forces of nature. A perfect mirror in the 17th century was a window into another world, a luxury so rare and expensive it was listed in royal inventories alongside crowns and jewels. This miracle of clarity was born from a dangerous alchemy, a secret process guarded by glassmakers who had perfected the art of capturing a reflection. Their first challenge was the glass itself, which had to be flawlessly flat and free of the bubbles and distortions that plagued ordinary window panes. Using a technique they developed for Cristallo, they poured molten glass onto a perfectly level metal table, rolling it into a sheet of unprecedented smoothness. But the true, closely held secret was the reflective backing. They did not use silver, but a terrifyingly beautiful amalgam of tin and mercury. In a guarded workshop, a master would carefully lay the thin sheet of glass upon a polished marble slab. He would then pour a layer of liquid mercury over it, followed by a sheet of the purest, thinnest tin foil. The two metals would begin to swim together, forming a silvery, liquid skin. With immense skill, the glass was then pressed and slid across the amalgam, squeezing out the excess mercury and leaving behind a perfectly even, molecularly thin layer of the tin-mercury mixture bonded to the glass. The result was a mirror of stunning clarity, a reflection so true and bright it seemed to double the world. The cost of this perfection was measured in lives. Mercury vapor is a slow, insidious poison, and the craftsmen who performed this work, often in poorly ventilated rooms, suffered from tremors, madness, and early death. Their guilds protected this lethal knowledge not just for profit, but to control a substance that could alter reality itself. For the first time in history, the wealthy could see themselves exactly as they were, in full figure and in fine detail. This sparked a revolution in interior design, with grand halls like the Hall of Mirrors at Versailles using countless reflective panels to multiply light and space, creating an illusion of infinite grandeur. More profoundly, it changed humanity's relationship with its own image, fostering a new era of self-awareness and individual identity. The secret of the mirror makers represents the ultimate ambition of these guarded crafts, to so completely master a material that they could alter not just the object in front of them, but the very perception of the person looking into it. The strength of a naval empire was measured in the tensile strength of its ropes. Within the cavernous rope walks of the royal dockyards, teams of craftsmen performed a daily ballet with hemp and machinery, their long sheds stretching farther than the eye could see. This was the domain of the master rope makers, a guild whose work was so critical that their methods were protected as matters of state. A single flawed cable could mean a warship losing its mast in a gale or an anchor line snapping in a storm, dooming the vessel and every soul aboard. Their first secret was in the preparation of the raw hemp. The fibers had to be meticulously combed and sorted, then treated with a secret mixture of tar and other substances to resist the relentless rot of salt water. But the true genius was in the twisting. Using a complex system of spinning jacks and walking wheels, the rope makers applied a precise, unwavering tension as they walked backwards down the immense shed, guiding the fibers as they twisted into yarns. These yarns were then twisted together in the opposite direction to form strands, and the strands were finally laid up into the finished rope. This counter-twisting, a delicate balance of opposing forces, was the master's art. It created a rope that was phenomenally strong yet remained supple, a cord that would not kink or unravel under the colossal strain of hoisting a full sail or securing a 3,000-pound anchor. The final product, a cable as thick as a man's arm and longer than a city street, was a masterpiece of physics and patience. The guild's mark stamped upon it was a guarantee of reliability, a promise that this seemingly simple object would hold fast when lives and the fortunes of nations were on the line. From the stone vaults of cathedrals to the towering masts of ships, these 28 societies were bound by a common thread. They understood that the rarest skills were not just techniques, but living traditions of excellence, guarded not for greed, but to ensure that the foundations of civilization were built to last. Why did they guard their knowledge with such fervor? Because in a world without patents, their secrecy was the only vault strong enough to protect genius, and their sworn brotherhoods were the living libraries that preserved the very blueprint of human progress. A master's secret formula was his only true property in a world without legal protection. These 28 societies, by guarding their skills so fiercely, effectively invented the very idea of intellectual property long before the first patent was ever filed. They established that a unique process, a specific technique, had inherent value that belonged to its creator or his sworn brotherhood. This concept of owned knowledge became the bedrock of modern industry and innovation. Their rigorous systems of training and their symbolic marks of quality created the earliest forms of brand assurance and consumer trust. When you saw the crossed swords on porcelain or a specific mark on a cornerstone, you knew you were getting a product of guaranteed excellence, a promise that has evolved into the certifications and quality standards we rely on today. The apprentice journeyman master model they perfected is the direct ancestor of our modern professional apprenticeships and internships, a structured path for passing complex skills from one generation to the next. Yet this control had a double edge. Their secrecy, while protective, also bred intense industrial espionage. Kings dispatched spies to steal porcelain recipes, and rival cities schemed to kidnap glassmakers. This shadow war of knowledge theft, though born from monopoly, ironically accelerated the spread of technology across continents. The very act of hoarding a secret created a powerful incentive for others to crack it, often leading to parallel discoveries and unexpected breakthroughs elsewhere. Within their own walls, the guilds fostered an unparalleled culture of mutual support and excellence. The secret handshakes and initiation rites were not just for show. They built a powerful sense of identity and shared purpose, binding members to a common standard of quality that was simply non-negotiable. But this insular world could also turn rigid. The very hierarchies that preserved quality sometimes resisted new ideas, viewing innovation as a threat to tradition. A master who dared to suggest a new tool or a different formula could be ostracized, his improvements lost to the weight of established ritual, and the monopolies they built while creating economic stability could also lead to exploitation, with guilds controlling prices and limiting production to keep their goods scarce and expensive. This is the complex inheritance they left us, a world still grappling with the same fundamental tension. Should groundbreaking knowledge be openly shared for the benefit of all, or fiercely protected to reward and incentivize the innovator? Our modern debates over pharmaceutical patents, software copyright, and open-source technology are simply new chapters in this ancient story. The choices these guilds made, for good and for ill, quietly built the framework for our world of made things. From the silent scriptoria to the roaring forges, these 28 secret societies of craftsmen were the true guardians of humanity's most precious practical knowledge. They remind us that profound mastery is often born not in the spotlight, but in the quiet shadows of dedication within a world of sworn oaths and profound respect for the materials they transformed. Their legacy is not locked away in history books, it is all around us. It is in the soaring stone of a cathedral that defies gravity, in the clarity of the lenses in your glasses, and in the very paper that recorded our collective wisdom. It is in the ticking of a clock and the chill of preserved food, in the vibrant color of a tapestry and the resonant voice of a violin. While their methods of extreme secrecy may seem antiquated to our open, digital world, their core understanding remains a timeless lesson. True skill is a treasure, a living tradition that must be nurtured, protected, and passed on with care to ensure that excellence endures. The next time you admire a well-made object, pause for a moment. Consider the hidden history it might hold, the generations of guarded knowledge that went into its creation. We would love to hear which of these secret societies fascinated you most in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this journey into the hidden corners of history, subscribe for more explorations of the forgotten forces that built our world.